Marketer of the Day, episode 579. Build your companionship company. Overcome the 7 deadliest employee communication sins. And manage high-performance teams with workplace communication expert Skip Weisman.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We're chatting with Skip Weisman from YourChampionshipCompany.com, and Skip is the leadership and workplace communication expert. He has all kinds of experience in professional sports, and Skip can connect championship performance in sports to winning results in small business. So Skip, I'm super glad to be talking to you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Robert. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. So can you kind of explain to us what you have going on and what you're all about and why should we care a whole bunch?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I spent 20 years in professional baseball, 16 of those as a CEO for a minor league professional baseball team, and I left after the 2001 season. It's hard to believe it's been 17 years. But what I realized towards the end of my baseball career was that really I was not in baseball per se. I was running a small business. It just happened to be in a very unique industry, professional baseball. But I had nothing to do with the baseball team per se. I didn't have anything to do with player personnel or what happened on the field. My job was just like any other small business owner. My job was to put butts in seats, keep the beer cold, and keep the bathrooms clean. And keep people coming back, keep fans coming back, selling tickets, selling sponsorships, selling concessions and merchandise, whatever it took to generate revenue for the franchise, for the business, small business that we operate in our community. And so I realized towards the end of my career that was no different than, the printer down the street or the retail outlet or any other business, that the manufacturing company, anybody that's got to, generate income for a business, they have the same challenges that I faced. We were just happened to be in a unique environment that, people thought was pretty cool, and so did I. And so I was getting actually kind of bored and burnt out on the lifestyle of baseball, and I decided, let me see if I can help other small businesses run their companies more effectively by applying the same strategies really that sports teams use to be successful and apply to small business. So that's how I came up with this whole concept around creating your championship company. And really the foundation of it is around communication. Because to create championship performance in sports, communication is vital. Trust and respect of your coworkers and your colleagues is vital. And so I take all those strategies and apply it to small business to create championship performance in a small business work environment.
Well, fantastic. And as you were explaining that, how it's like your job is to, get the butts in seats, sell the tickets, do the marketing. What that made me think of is, it's easy to overlook how important that is, right? Sometimes, in like a baseball or sports team context, it's really easy to say, oh, well, all this stuff will just sell themselves, right? If the team's great, then people will just find it. But they won't. And I think a lot of marketers out there kind of fall into the same trap, right? They say, well, if my courses are so great, or if my software is so great, it'll just sell itself. But then it can easily lead to doing a lot of work, but then not putting yourself out there enough. And then you kind of scratch your head wondering why the heck everyone else is getting all the attention, right?
Yeah, and that's a really great analogy too for the sports angle that I was working in, because in major league sports, within the National Football League or Major League Baseball, the quality of your team really does matter. And if you do have a good team, you'll sell more tickets if you win, right? Everybody wants to come out and see a winner. But in the minor leagues, fans, it's nice if you win, but nobody really cares about whether we win or lose, because we have no control over it. So what we focused on was the environment that we provided for our fans: family entertainment, nice, fun evening at the ballpark. And so the most important part of our season was not the season, because we couldn't control whether we won or lost. We didn't have that insight. We didn't know who our team was even going to be until the team showed up 3 or 4 days before opening day, when the major league team sent us our roster. So all we could control was what we could control, which was the preseason marketing and promotion of the team. So we would just bust our butt from October to March selling the franchise sponsorships and advertising and tickets. So that if we did that on the front end, before the season began, we could guarantee a successful financial year regardless of whether the team played well or whether we had a rainy season.
Fantastic. So it sounds like you're setting yourself up for success. And what you're making me think of there is that a lot of people, when they say they're hosting a marketing event or they're doing a product launch or something, there's definitely, it's really important to get things set up months and months ahead of time so that it's almost impossible for it to fail. And then likewise, you see people out there who they're just kind of winging it, and then they leave so many things up to chance, and then it's like if the event flops or the launch flops, they didn't have all these other things in place. They didn't have all that momentum building up for months and months ahead of time. So it seems like that's a really important lesson in there to lay the groundwork for what you're doing well ahead of time so that it's impossible to fail.
Oh yeah, preparation is the key, and really understanding what those success factors are that have to be in place, and to put them in place well ahead of time. And people, it's all 20 years I was in the game, and it never failed me. Fans would come up to us on opening day, and or the last game of the season. They would either ask us what we did all winter or what we're going to do all winter, right? Because they thought we just showed up and it all happened, right? But we back time everything from opening day. So, once we get our schedule, which is usually October 1st, we back time everything from that following June. So if opening day is June 15th, we had an entire project schedule from October 1st to June 15th till opening day. And we had benchmarks we had to meet all the way through so that we knew we'd have a successful season whether the team won or lost.
Well, great. So how does that translate to you working with small businesses now? Do you I assume you do sort of the same strategy. You say like, well, you have this big event or this big launch or this new product coming out, and then kind of do that back timing and go back in the calendar and see what milestones need to be hit?
Yeah, that's certainly part of it. And that's probably secondary, even tertiary. Is that the right word?
I think so.
Yeah, because really what I have to do initially, usually when clients are coming to me, is that their work environment is not even set up to successfully do something like that. So the employee's mindset, the employee motivation and morale in the work environment is not where it needs to be to create that type of success. And so really I'm working with, for lack of a better term, somewhat dysfunctional work environments where the business owner and the employees are not exactly seeing eye to eye or getting along, or there's struggles in the workplace that's getting in the way of that type of work. And so much of what I do is I create what I call the right work environment with the right people to get the right results. And so oftentimes we have to take a number of steps back to look at what's going on in the work environment. How are people interacting and engaging with each other, communicating with each other, to create the right environment so that those things can be implemented. And usually it takes a little bit of time to get that environment in the right place, because it's been oftentimes years before anybody has been communicated with properly to create a positive and productive work environment. And so, that will come probably the third phase of our work together. We'll finally be able to create the right environment where that stuff will be able to manifest and flow nicely.
Okay, and that seems really important because like when sometimes I'll have an issue with like business partners or clients or outsourcers, and there'll be all kinds of weird communication disconnects. And then something that comes to mind for some reason at the moment is I have a coaching client whose employees are supposed to sell on the phone, but they're not really doing a good job, and both sides aren't really that clear what the expectations are. And what really hits home for me, what you said there, is that whole concept of things have been done in a certain way for the last number of years, so then they're almost like stuck in the mud. It's really hard to change and shed some of those habits. So do you have any interesting stories where you kind of just jumped into one of these companies that had this dysfunction and you worked things out with them?
Yeah, a couple of them. One that comes to mind is my good friend Gary, who I just went on a 30-mile bike ride with, but 6 years ago. He was in a seminar I gave on creating your championship company. He came up to me after the the seminar, we actually had a sort of a spirited interchange during the seminar. He came up to me afterwards and he said, I just fired one employee, small company, only 7 people plus Gary, so they 8 total people. I just fired one employee and I'm on the verge of firing another. I think we should talk. And so we talked, and I learned early on that he had a communication problem, a communication gap with his 7 employees. He hired me. I went in. I basically did a culture assessment, as I call it. I interviewed all of his employees, and the main message I got from his employees consistently across all 7 of them was that Gary sent mixed messages with his communication, and there was confusion. And so I give this feedback to him, and he looks at me square in the face and says, "No, Skip, there's no confusion. I'm perfectly clear." So I said, "Well, almost across the board, I'm hearing from your people that you're sending mixed messages and they're confused. And so I think you're sending mixed messages and they are confused. So let's work on that." Fortunately, he was open to that. And he had one senior person, a guy who had been with him for 14 years. It's a company that has technicians out in the field in trucks doing field work on construction sites. And this one senior tech was this other guy he was looking to fire. And he had a pretty negative attitude. They would have conflicts all the time. And so I went to Gary. I said, "Okay, here's an idea." I'd been working with the company for probably 4 to 6 weeks. I said, "I want to give Sean, this guy, more responsibility because you're micromanaging him, and he feels like he's constantly being looked at over his shoulder, and you don't trust him. So let's test him and give him some more responsibility." And so Gary looked at me like I had 3 heads, but I said, just trust me on this. And he was having trouble with the vehicles, the trucks. They weren't keeping care of the trucks. They were beating them up. They were banging them up. They weren't maintaining them well. And so I said, let's give responsibility to Sean for the maintenance of all 4 of your vehicles that are on the street. And what we're going to do is we're going to have him go to the bookkeeper and research the last 5 years of maintenance. And we're going to put him in charge of maintenance. We're going to give him, we're going to ask him to come back to us with a budget for next year on vehicle maintenance. And Gary just thought I was crazy. So we give this project to Sean. Within 30 days, Sean comes back to us with an evaluation saying, "Gary, we amortize these trucks and trade them in every 5 years. If we just spend a couple $100 more each year on vehicle maintenance, we can probably get 7 years out of the trucks." And Gary was blown away because he thought Sean didn't care about the trucks or the company or the future. He was just cared about, being in the moment and his next salary raise or bonus or whatever. But Sean came back to us with a strategy to save money for the company and extend the life of the trucks. And it just showed that Sean did care about the company. If you just give people a little more responsibility, give them a little bit of trust, and they'll surprise you if you do it the right way and you communicate with them the right way. And that was 6 years ago. I just did this bike ride with Gary, who's now able to spend some time away from the company because he doesn't have to be there micromanaging everybody all the time. Now he's doing triathlons, and we went on a long bike ride. And Gary said Sean is still a great company leader after 5 years now. So that's one really good success story that I'm really proud of and excited to tell.
Super cool. Yeah. And it sounds like, just from what you were explaining there, as far as what happened, is that it's really easy to look at things really one-sided, right? It's really easy to just say, like, well, that employee's lazy, or I have to micromanage them for some reason. And just from you telling that story, it seems to me like you coming in and talking to Gary by himself and talking to these employees by yourself, you were this third party to really, like, look at things neutrally. So that way it wasn't just, Gary just, beating everyone over the head with stuff. And it wasn't just, you weren't taking sides, right? It wasn't just completely going with what the employees said. You kind of looked at both angles and said, well, you don't have this person in here to look at all the angles. So that's me. And now here's the solution here.
Yeah, I had no filters. I had no preconceived notions of anything. I just went in there as an independent observer, and both sides trusted me that I had no agenda other than to help them make the company better. And that's one of the most refreshing things of these conversations, because the first thing I ever do in a company when I go in, and I work with very small companies, what I say is 6 to 60 employees, because I like working with everybody in the company to change the work environment. And I just go in there. I'm very candid and vulnerable and humble. And I say, I don't know your company. I don't know your industry. Oftentimes, you're the experts in your environment, the company, the industry. I need you to help me help you. So it's the whole Jerry Maguire effect, right? um, but I want to help you create your ideal work environment. And the company owner has hired me to do this. He's serious about it. He has promised that anything you tell me is totally private. There'll be no repercussions. And I give you my word to that effect as well. And can we work together? And most people are pretty refreshed by that and buy into it. Some people are a little cynical and they might hold back for a little while until I gain trust from them. But then usually just that conversation opens people up because they're starving to be heard. They've got ideas. They want to help the company get better. Either the business owner is afraid to listen or doesn't want to listen or doesn't think they have value. But these employees are starved to be heard because they do have ideas to help make the company better. And whether they're implemented or not is less important than if the ideas just come out and they're considered and evaluated and then given feedback. And so most people are open to it. And I'm able to do some really, really fun stuff with people once we break down those those barricades.
I imagine once people kind of lessen the filter there and they're not as afraid to lose their jobs. And sometimes you hear about those sorts of things where, like, for example, I think Amazon has some sort of a mechanism where employees can anonymously like just make comments and things like that. And that seems like that's on the right track. But then by having the neutral third party there seems like that's even better. So you say that it sometimes takes a little while for people's barriers to come down. How long are we talking here? Like when you jump in with a company, how long does it take for you to work your magic?
I would obviously every situation is unique and different, but I've been able to get significant results within 90 days. And by significant results, I mean just getting people to change their attitudes and be open and to start contributing ideas and suggestions and to start to break that door open. So within really 30, 60, 90 days, the latest, we can get people to open up and start getting the conversation changed and getting people really to feel like, there's something here and I want to contribute to it. So and when that works, it's a lot of fun. And the other reason is by the time most companies get to me, they've tried a lot of other things. And they're all frustrated and they don't know where to turn next because they think they've tried everything and they really haven't. And so this approach allows them to just to give it one last try. And it seems to work and it's pretty rewarding. Now, on the flip side, I can tell you I've been working with a small manufacturing company with 25 employees that for at least 10 to 15 years had a significant toxic work environment where employees were yelling at each other in the hallways, chasing each other down the aisleway to yell and scream at them about stuff. And this has been going on for years, the same people in this work environment. It took us 12 months to turn around the work environment to where we could get the crap out of the way and people were really focused on moving forward and doing stuff and letting old agendas go. But that was a serious situation. It was very rewarding at the end, but it was also very scary, and I almost gave up a couple of times along the way because it was so nasty. But we worked it out, and this year we're working on a second year, and it's really rewarding because now the meetings we're having in the conference room with some key employees are all about what's ahead of us and what are the opportunities and how can we leverage these opportunities now, when before they couldn't even sit in the same room together without yelling at each other. So
Wow. Yeah. I mean, a lot of stuff to unlearn. And imagine if
Mhm.
only they'd come to you a decade ago instead of all this wasted time, all this aggravation. It could have all been avoided.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's you just never know where you're going to find these opportunities. And then back then they probably weren't ready for it, right? They were, for whatever reason, they were still happy and stuck in their own ways. So the timing is what the timing is, unfortunately. But it's going well now, so we're pleased.
Yeah, and just it sounds like from your attitude here, it's like if I mean it can't hurt, right? There's no downside to try different things in your business and try different things to make things run smoothly. And so when you're saying that it takes 90 days or it takes a year, how does that work with you? Like, do you only work in a certain area? Do you fly in? Are you there every day? When we say 90 days, like how does that work as far as as far as your time?
Yeah, that's a great question. Through the magic of things like Skype and the new Zoom video conferencing, I'm actually able to do this internationally. I have a client in New Zealand, and I'm in New York, and we get on a Zoom video conference session once a month with the leadership team of the company. There's 7 of them. They get in a conference room with a video cam and a microphone, and I do my magic from my office, and I facilitate conversations that way. So uh, it's amazing that with technology what you can accomplish, and so I can do it anywhere, and it really just depends on whether the business is open to it. The business owner really, because they're the one who has to make the investment in it. But I have a systematic program called the Small Business Championship Game Plan. I use a metaphor of sports, and it's actually a baseball model of circling the bases with 4 different strategies, and what I call game plan, the playbooks of the game plan. And we just work through whatever playbook we need, depending on where the company is and where the situation is. And the first thing is typically that foundation of communication. Look at how are people communicating with each other, and we set some guidelines and foundations around how we're going to interact and communicate with each other. And I do some training around that and some coaching around that to get people to the place where they can communicate more effectively, to start the conversations the right way.
Okay, great. So, I mean, would you say that from all your travels and all your, debugging of the system here and there and dealing with the communication, would you say is there like a number one problem or low hanging fruit that you keep seeing coming up again and again that just could be really easily solved if only they'd listen to you?
Yeah, I guess. Well, I always say every problem, every frustration, every upset, and every success in any business is really caused by some type of communication. And so and companies are always complaining. People are always complaining about their communication. Or they always say, communication can always be better, and it's so true. But the problem is nobody ever defines it in a way that they can do anything with it. And so we sit in a conference room, we talk about communication in this general sense, and people may have a deeper knowledge or a deeper concept of where they think communication needs to get better, but they're afraid to say it because the environment won't let them, right? And so we just throw this platitudinal concept of communication on a flip chart or on a whiteboard, and everybody nods their head and says, "Yeah, we got to improve communication." And we come back in 90 days and nothing has changed, right? Because we don't really say what's going on, because that's too difficult, that's too hard, that's gonna put me at risk, or right. And so I hold back. I just throw it out there, and who's ever facilitating, who's ever leading the conversation, usually the business owner, um, doesn't take it to that next level because that's not their skill set, and they may not want to go any deeper because it's safe for them. And we just keep dancing around this thing around communication. But communication is the foundational problem behind every problem in an organization. And you've got to define it. And that's what I've tried to do with the work I do. And that's why I just wrote the new book that I just published on the 7 deadliest communication sins that are occurring. And so that's the foundation. That's where I usually start, because that's what's dancing around every every work environment. People don't even realize it.
Right. I mean, it's easy to say, communicate better, or there's lack of communication. But then when you're describing some of these scenarios, it's plain as day to see, looking from the outside looking in. But then I'm sure there are a lot of business owners out there who say, oh, well, that's not me. But it's like, isn't it? Like, maybe that could be the root of some of these problems. So you mentioned that you have like this program and this book and this service. So can you tell us, like, if someone out there is listening to all this and they say, all right, I know I need help with this, I'm sold, what do you have for us today?
Well, I would start with the book on overcoming the 7 deadliest communication sins, because they're absolutely occurring in your work environment. And I do seminars on the topic. I do keynote addresses on that topic, and it's amazing that so many people come up to me afterward and say, all of this stuff is going on in my work environment. This is nothing new, but you put a framework and you defined it in ways that we can actually do something about it now. And so the book has a number of case studies. The Gary situation is in the book. But it talks about the 7 biggest communication mistakes that are causing all of your problems and frustrations and stresses right now, and tips and techniques and strategies to overcome the 7 communication sins. So that's the first place I would start. And realize that people in your company, want to do a good job. They do care about you and the present state and the future of your company. And give them a voice, give them an opportunity to share their thoughts, their feelings, their ideas, and let it get fleshed out. You're not going to be able to implement everything. Some of the ideas may be stupid and cost too much or whatever. That's okay. Let them voice it and have a conversation about it, and give them real answers, real business case scenario answers for why you may or may not be able to implement something. And they'll have a greater understanding. They'll feel like they've been heard and that they're contributing to the company, and it will increase their morale and motivation overnight. And that's the best piece of advice I can give you. And that's really what the 7 Communication Sins book is all about.
Well, that is wonderful advice, and I hope that sinks in with a lot of people out there to communicate more and listen better, even if it's a silly idea. I mean, let the idea be heard, and then you can shoot it down with some, practicality, or maybe that will open the door to something better. So you have this overcoming the 7 deadliest communication sins book as a starting point. So where can and where should people go to grab that?
Well, they can go to 7deadliestcommunicationsins.com. There's a webpage for that, and they can get access to it there. And if they want the book sells for $19.95, includes shipping. If they want a free overview of that and just get sort of a taste of it, they can go to workplacecommunicationexpert.com and get just a short little 10-page guide that kind of gives an overview of it if they don't want the whole depth of the book. And they can get that for free at workplacecommunicationexpert.com.
All right, fantastic. So the place to go is 7deadliestcommunicationsins.com to get the real book. And then, like Skip said, if you want just the real quick, free, short version, workplacecommunicationexpert.com. But I mean, let's not kid ourselves. If you really want help, then you're going to want to get the actual book. You're going to want to actually put down the real easy $19.95 right there, because I mean, how much is it costing you every single day with every single employee, with all these little tiny problems that you have that add up to a lot? I mean, it's time to finally say, I've had enough. I'm fed up. I don't want to settle anymore. I want to have a business that works really great. I want to have employees that are happy to be there. I want things to, I want to have this free time. I want to not be always worried about what's the next big crisis. So 7deadliestcommunicationsins.com is the place to go. And thanks, Skip, for being super honest with us and sharing with us all kinds of fun stories and lessons. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you for coming on here.
Robert, thanks for having me. You've been a great interview, and I've enjoyed our time together. Thanks so much.
Awesome. You're welcome. Do you want a podcast like this one? Well, what's been holding you back? What if it was easy and you had someone to help you get it going? Check out doneforyoupodcasting.com, where we'll handle some or all of your podcast setup, production, marketing, and more. See you soon at doneforyoupodcasting.com.